Hi everyone, welcome back. Last time we talked about mapping the competitive market landscape, especially building a real-time shared view of who the players are in the market and how they're responding to the market dynamics and economic environment. Now we've mapped the field, the next question will be what makes the competitors strong and what could make them weak? That's what we're going to discuss today, measuring the competitive advantages and spotting potential threats. By the end of today's conversation, I hope you will be able to understand how to assess which competitive advantages are sustainable versus which ones are fragile, spot vulnerabilities by mapping possible breach paths, and identify small practical advantages that you can create for your company. And most importantly, be able to apply AI in a structured way so that your work is faster and more useful. So let's maybe start with the why. What is competitive advantage? A competitive advantage is anything that can make a company strong in the market. This could be something like a unique data set, a loyal customer community, brand recognition, or regulatory approval. All these advantages can protect the company sometimes for years. But here's one challenge. No advantage will last forever. If we can't measure the strength and also understand how fragile they could be, we'll risk creating a strategy based on assumptions. And we all know assumptions could have a way of breaking at the worst time. I remember I used to be in one product review meeting when someone said confidently that our brand is our advantage. Another person also added, our seamless integrations make us really strong in front of competition. Those words sound really reassuring, but when we asked for evidence, the conversation suddenly became quiet. No one had any numbers, customer proof, or even external signals to back up their story. That's something you need to pay attention to. If your team can't measure your strengths, they can effectively protect them. And it matters because it moves the conversation from what we think to what the evidence shows. If you skip this step, there are two things that could happen. You could either overestimate your strength, which means you assume the advantage is going to last for a long time, or you could underestimate the potential threats. This means you could miss early signals that someone is closing the gap until it's too late to respond. Think about BlackBerry. They once had network security and keyboard hardware as their big advantages. But later on, touchscreens and app ecosystems shifted customer expectations, and those advantages soon disappeared. They didn't measure how fragile those strengths could be, and they ultimately paid the price. That's why identifying potential threats early is just as important as recognizing the strengths. Traditionally, if you want to analyze competitive strengths, it usually takes months of research. This could include understanding analyst reports, analyzing survey interview results, and analyzing lengthy and complex spreadsheets. AI doesn't replace the need for validation, but it can make the first draft faster and easier to work with. Instead of chasing down every single data point, you can actually set up clear AI prompts that give you a starting framework in just a few minutes. From there, you could further verify and refine. The key is to know how to design the AI prompts that are specific enough to be useful and flexible enough to be able to adapt to your market. So let's maybe start with competitive strength. For example, you want to look into categories like data ownership, network effects, or economies of scale. Here's something you can actually start with AI. Say you are a competitive intelligence analyst. For a certain list of competitors, you would like to summarize their strength across the key categories like data, network effects, economies of scale, regulation, brand, and distribution channels. Use only one and verifiable information. For each strength, provide a description, a confidence rating, say high, medium, low, and list one source you and your team can check. This simple prompt gives you a very basic view that you can continue to refine and test. Next, let's talk about vulnerabilities and what I call breach paths. Each advantage will have at least one vulnerability. For example, regulations can change, technologies can shift, customer preferences can also change. A new entrant with enough funding can sometimes also buy their way into the market. If you don't map these breach paths, you will treat every advantage as it is, which can be very risky. So here's an AI prompt that can allow you to explore the breach path. For example, let's say you are a strategy consultant. For a certain competitor you're interested in, list their top 3 to 5 competitive advantages. For each one, also suggest 2 plausible breach paths, including ways their strength could be weakened, such as technology shifts, regulatory changes, or even new entrants. Rate each breach path for likelihood and potential impact. This prompt doesn't only predict the future, it also allows you to see what could realistically happen and what is the potential impact. So now let's shift the focus back to you. Not every company can build a massive competitive advantage like Amazon's distribution network or Apple's ecosystem, but every team could build small focus edges that can make it harder to replace. I would like to call these macro advantages. These are practical, achievable advantages that could give you leverage in the market. For example, a compliance certification can make you a safe choice in the regulatory industry. A unique integration that could lock your product into a daily workflow. Or even a proven onboarding experience could give you customer to value much faster than anyone else. In order to get these, you can actually compose the following prompt, right? Say you are a product strategist. Based on your product description or a list of key features, let's compare it with certain competitors, suggest top 3 to 5 small but defensible advantages that you and your team could develop in the next 12 months. For each one of them, also explain why it could be hard for your competitor to replace and which customer segment could value this the most. What this does is to shift your team's thinking. Instead of chasing impossible advantages that are very hard to develop, you can actually identify achievable wins you could develop now. Okay, we've covered a lot. Let's try to connect the dots here. In order to create a full competitive advantage and threats analysis, you will need to first create a draft competitor strength. Use the first prompt we just discussed. Then verify each claim with the primary source and tag confidence levels. Then map the breach paths for each strength and use the second prompt. Use the last prompt to surface your own small advantages, and then package everything into one-page scorecard. Your scorecard should show your top competitors, their key strengths and supporting evidence. Also list their breach path and your own macro advantages. When your leadership sees this, the conversation will be much more productive. It will no longer be our brand is our strength. The conversation will be more likely around here's the evidence of our strength, here's where we're exposed, and here's how we want to protect ourselves. Just to recap, we started with the context of why understanding the competitive advantages and threats really matter. We also talked about the risk of ignoring them and then walked through how AI can make the process faster and more useful. So now I would like you to give it a try. Let's pick 3 top competitors. Run the first prompt to scan their strengths. Run the second prompt to map the breach path for each. And then run the last prompt to identify one micro advantage you would like to develop. Package them into one scorecard and share it with your team and your leadership. It doesn't have to be perfect, but putting these together will change the conversation. So in the next session, we're going to build on this by talking about something I personally enjoy doing, which is scenario planning. This is how you can anticipate rivalry moves and prepare simple playbooks so that you're ready before the disruption hits. So thank you so much for for joining me today again, and see you next time. Bye.